forward to the cloud. There
Okay.
we go.
After Sydney Banks had his initial spiritual experience, he turned to his wife and said, "I'm free. I've come home." Many of the people Sid worked with had the same experience, and you will hear that same realization in many of the personal stories that follow. What is this feeling of coming home, and how does this help us with mental illness? Sid taught that when we feel love and connection, we are being our true selves. We are home. Realizing our true spiritual nature is the only remedy we need for mental distress. And we don't need to work at it because our true nature will reveal itself when our minds are calm and free of insecure thoughts. I am certain that if you are able to observe anyone at the beginning of any of the 300 diagnoses listed in the DSM, you would see that it began because their true nature of innate health was innocently covered up by prolonged, stressful thinking, followed by the pathologizing of their very human behavior. True nature, innate health, and the feeling of coming home are all different ways to describe the spiritual experience of life. Knowing that we are the thinker of the thoughts that block or hide our true nature is the key to freedom. If you know that you are the thinker and that thoughts are neutral, always moving, when there is no need to be frightened by them, thoughts pass like clouds. The sky isn't perturbed by the weather or birds or airplanes. They are all just passing through. We all work the same way. There are no exceptions. It's only the degree to which we have each got caught up that we suffer. As Sid Banks often said, we are all one thought away from good mental health. How could he be so certain? It's simple. The last car in the train of thought, the caboose, is always followed by another new train, another new thought, and we always have the potential for it to be the fresh and new. As we feel better and become grounded in these ideas, the spaces between thought gets a little bigger and softer. This is peace of mind. Sydney Banks identifies the missing link. He found the missing piece. Anxiety seems to be the core of every diagnosis. When you read the personal stories in part 2, you can feel in the words that tell how each person's thinking started to get a little insecure and speeded up. What if anxiety is just speeding up thinking? When any of us have even the slightest anxious thoughts, we are feeling the experience of relying on ourselves. When we trust our finite selves, we are falling for the illusion of our limited thinking and have forgotten that there is an intelligence to the universe that is reliable and infinite. Deep down, we know that we are finite and limited. Even the most accomplished of us cannot do or know everything. And that can be a very scary prospect when life is closing in on you. It doesn't matter whether you call it universal intelligence, God, higher power, Allah, or the quantum field. Trusting the power brings relief, a feeling of safety and comfort. There is plenty of research to show that people who have some kind of spiritual belief are better at coping with life challenges. Whether it's dealing with grief or recovering from surgery, for example. In fact, research shows that someone with a window in their hospital room will recover quicker than someone without. Why? Because in a better mood we tap into their place beyond, a place of hope and freedom. When we are caught up in the limited beliefs and self-sabotaging thinking, it's like being in the basement with the lights out. And that's terrifying if you don't know what's happening. Dr. Judy Segman writes, the study of the three principles is about what happened before there is any content, that is, before the formation of thought. What is before thought? What happens before a thought is formed? It is the beautiful feeling that Sid Banks was pointing to us to, the feeling of coming home. What we are talking about is learning to live in the present moment, in the now. when you aren't distracted by your own negative thinking, when you don't allow yourself to get in the moments that are gone or yet to come. You are left with this moment. This moment, now, truly is the only moment you have. It is beautiful and special. Life is simply a series of such moments to be experienced, one right after another. If you attend to the moment you are in and stay connected to your soul and remain happy, you will find that your heart's filled with positive feelings.
Beautiful. I just wanted to, and any time you can stop when something strikes you and hits you, because I think it would be good for people who are listening to have that little break so that they can then get their head back into listening. But that's just me, let me know if you see it differently.
No, that's fine.
In any book group that I've been in, we just jump in and say, oh, wait a minute, I didn't get that. Can you read it again? Or, wow, I just thought of something, or I think this is full of crap. So that's how I've been in my book groups. It's all, just talking like normal human beings in a room. So.
All right. I'm going to jump in with that. Go ahead. Just wanted to highlight, there was something that was just beautiful. Let's see if I can find it.
Yeah, see, Lori, can I just say something before you start?
Absolutely.
A book group to me is very, very different than listening to a Sid vid. A book group is meant to be stimulating the mind.
Yeah.
And the Sid vid is meant to quiet the mind. So it's a very different dynamic. So just as an FYI, but go ahead.
Yeah. We all see things a little differently, but I'm glad, I like when you share how you see things, each of you. Yeah. So on right at the beginning of chapter 6, I have come home. Sid taught that when we feel love and connection, we are being our true selves. That, wow. That is like a whole book right there. That one sentence. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the. All right. So I think my eyes are okay to do a little reading to give you a little break, unless you want to do that, Wendy, because you're in a place you can read.
I can read. Let's see. Okay, you ended with, you will find that your heart is filled with positive feelings.
Yes. On the top of 29 in my 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is Hannah talking again. In my 30 years of counseling people with mental health problems, I have never known someone with a heart filled with positive feelings, gratitude, and wisdom feel insecure or anxious. Now, I just want to stop there because I've been in many groups with Hannah, and she says that over and over and over again. If you have a happy heart, it's going to be very hard to be anxious and scared. So there's something, that correlation or that distinction is she makes that over and over. That's like a pet distinction for her. And if they had such a thought, they would know not to take it seriously of being insecure or anxious if you are in a happy mindset. Trusting that there is an infinite loving kindness to the universe, a reliable system that works the same for all of us, is the key to good mental health. It is the spiritual nature of life that can never be broken or contaminated. This is who we all are underneath the stinky thinking. And it doesn't take months or years of work to get there because there is no there to get to. We are already there. It doesn't take complicated techniques or machines or medicines. In fact, it's when we stop all that busy analyzing, fixing, and searching that, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, we realize we had it all the time. It's who we really are. All human beings, when they are in their best minds, are peaceful. We are patience, kindness, and wisdom. We don't need to work at it. We are all naturally forgiving, content, flexible, full of inspiration, creativity, and intuition. We only need to work at it when we fall into the illusions of disordered thinking. It is only in that dark space we innocently believe we are broken and need fixing. Children are such a great example of this. They can scream the house down when they don't get what they think they want, and 5 minutes later, it's like it never happened. Well, we all still have that natural capacity for resilience. And when we see through the illusion of our thoughts, we are right back there. I just want to point out, I'm having a little bit of an insight right this minute. I remember this now. I've always been uncomfortable with the word illusion. And the reason I thought, oh my goodness gracious, I'm in Florida, so I'm looking at a great egret just flying by my face. Anyway, uh, the word illusion used to mean to me that my thoughts, the content of them were illusion, like, and it's very close to the word delusional to me. Like, it's a beautiful day here in Florida. Oh, you know what that means. There's going to be a storm, sure as anything, because I'm here. Like some sort of weird thoughts, like that could be illusion or whatever. But whatever, the content of my thinking is not where the illusion is. The illusion that Sid was pointing at, and I'm just seeing very freshly in this moment, is the illusion that our thoughts can be trusted. That's the illusion, not the content of my thoughts. I don't want to be thinking that I am boop, 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 you know, because I might add 2 and 2 = 4. Look around me, my husband doesn't have a job and the Department of Unemployment Insurance might not pay him. That's true. It's not an illusion. It's inaccurate. But the illusion is believing that my death and destruction are around the corner because Jeff doesn't have, or whatever. The illusion is thinking that thoughts are accurate barometer of life. That's the illusion. And I really want to, I'm saying it over and over because I have forgotten it. But just reading it that way just now reminded me that's the illusion. It isn't the content. It's the misunderstanding. Illusion
Yeah.
is another way of saying the misunderstanding of mind, thought, and consciousness.
Right. It's like
The-
what we make up our story about the thing. The person loses a job, and then we make up that's true, that's accurate. There's verifiable proof in the world of that, but it's all the cacophony that we make up around that, the story that we create around that. That's great that you
yeah, the
took
the
the
illusion, yeah, the illusion to me is forgetting how my experience comes to me. My experience comes to me from the inside out, and the illusion is thinking, "Oh my gosh, look at that. My bank account's low. I'm going to die." That's the illusion, is when I fall for that meaning making. That's my illusion, is like, "Oh yeah, that's right. Wendy, just go take a walk. Go soak your head in the tub and forget about it. Whatever." Like that. So the illusion is me falling for my own innocent misunderstanding once again. Yeah.
yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, great. Great. Okay. We
I-
only need to work at it when we fall into the illusions of disordered thinking. Right there. I'm going to highlight it because I'm reading my book on my Kindle. Innocent disordered thinking. Boom, right there. All right. It is only in that dark place we innocently believe we are broken and need fixing. Children are such a great example of this. They can scream the house down when they don't get what they think they want. And 5 minutes later, it's like it never happened. Well, we all still have that natural capacity for resilience. And when we see through the illusion of our thoughts, we're right back there, content and present, no matter what our circumstances are, no work needed. Full stop. Mental health lies within the consciousness of all human beings, but it is shrouded and held prisoner by our own erroneous thoughts. There you go. Who said that, I wonder? Does it say? Do you have that reference?
Yeah. Sid. Yeah.
That's a
That's a
Sid.
Sid. Yeah. From Missing Link.
Okay, thank you. Okay. If this seems too simplistic or insufficient for the depths of suffering that some people find themselves in, then please continue and read the personal stories of the transformation that follow. People who've been labeled with everything from psychosis and OCD to bipolar, general anxiety disorder, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder tell how this simple understanding has transformed their lives and set them free. Free of symptoms, stigma, and diagnoses that would have meant living in distress and despair for the rest of their lives. Then you will read about a university professor who has published multiple evidence based research articles on the three principles in peer reviewed medical journals and books. And finally, you will hear about organizations that are taking these ideas into the schools, prisons, and street gangs. If only people learned not to be afraid of their own experience, that alone would change the world. Now, I want to click on that number 50 because it says attributed to Sid Banks. Yeah, because evidently no one, nobody can actually find where he said that. There's nothing, everybody, that's like apocryphal, like he said that, but nobody can actually find either the audio tape or the written word where he said that. But anyway, it's okay. I was thinking she did. I was like, oh boy. All right, part 2. Do you want me to keep reading?
I can pick up if you like.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Part 2, introduction. In the following chapters, you will read some incredible and inspiring stories of people who were diagnosed or labeled with a mental health disorder. They have all been told they were damaged, broken, and possibly disabled for life in some way. Their inspiring recoveries are the heart of what this book is about. They demonstrate again and again the innate resilience of the human spirit that can never be broken or damaged. Even though the darkest of times and most painful experiences, these people have seen what Sydney Banks pointed to, the role of thought as the mystical bridge between suffering and health. I've organized the stories into similar categories as used in medical literature, but you will notice how arbitrary the system is. Many of the stories contain multiple diagnoses and overlapping symptoms, which means they can all be filed under a choice of headings. I have highlighted in bold each person's additional diagnosis to emphasize this point. This confirms for me there is just one cause with multiple symptoms. Each category is introduced by a conversation with a three principal mental health professional, all of whom are MDs or PhDs with extensive experience in both clinical and private practices. My aim here is to show there are no exceptions. The stories come from all over the world, from Argentina to New Zealand to Africa, from Chicago to Manchester and Oslo. These disorders range from psychosis to anorexia. You may come across some diagnoses that you have never heard of before, such as tocophobia. There are also some incredible case studies from practitioners who have witnessed recovery in their clients. Some are children as young as 5 or 6. You may even read stories of recovery from diagnoses that you were told could never improve, that the best thing that person could hope for was to learn how to cope. Autism, ADHD, and bipolar, for example. And I'm going to add borderline personality and narcissistic disorders. When reading these stories, it may seem too good to be true. Are there people who are introduced to the three principles and still struggle to find insight and relief? Of course. I have chosen these particular stories to show you it can and does work. To quote my colleague Sandy Crott, there isn't a problem that insight can't solve. As my editor started to read through these stories, she asked if we should put a trigger warning on some of them. She was right. Some of the stories contain quite graphic and dark details. So I've delved into the subject of trigger warnings to see what I could find. First of all, I personally don't like the word triggered, as it implies that there is something on the outside of us that can make us feel something. As we have established, we are all living in our own thought, created experience, so that we can never be true, as we have very different reactions to all situations. But I wanted to be sensitive and realized that after 35 years as a coach and counselor, I am used to hearing dark and tragic things, but others are not. My first step was to see what the current feeling is. So I put out a poll to a large Facebook group. I asked to see what the current feeling, I asked, does a trigger warning make you stop reading further? Does a trigger warning make you curious and want to read more? Do you appreciate the option? The results were fascinating. Option 1 and 2 were pretty equal, but most for option 3. In the ensuing discussion, I was offered the alternative of content warning. Many pointed out how the idea of a trigger warning is very infantilizing, and I agree. Interesting. Next, I discovered some Harvard research
Wait
on
a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Elaine, you have to tell me why you said interesting.
So part of my conditioning in my own training is that, part of trauma is triggers.
Right,
People end up having flashbacks or panic attacks. People have difficulty sleeping or functioning because of triggers. So if
right,
you say something in an innocuous way, a person may end up feeling panic because of the way you said it, and it
right,
reminds them of that trauma.
right. And I think if Hannah were here, she would say that that's, a habit that we've gotten into.
Yeah.
And
Now,
also,
there's, oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
I would also add that it's also society's conditioning about triggers. I have met clients who had unbelievable things happen to them. And guess what? They were coming to me for something totally different because
Mhm.
they had this unbelievable, very difficult thing happen to them, which later, this idea about triggering is fairly new. When I was first in the field in my 20s, nobody was talking about triggers. Nobody was talking about traumas back then. So it's so much of it is condition. And I'm just going to read that line at the top of the page that you read again, because I feel the same way. When Hannah said, personally, I don't like the word triggered, as it implies that there is something on the outside of us that can make us feel something. Yeah. Isn't
Yeah.
that interesting? That is so ingrained in people. I don't think a day goes by that I don't hear that word,
Mhm.
that somebody felt triggered, or they're listening to music and they got triggered. And then what happens? They go into their memory because
Yeah.
they get this feeling. They go into their memory. Oh, that feeling. Yeah, I remember that song was playing when this horrible thing happened, or, and then they like relive it.
Mhm.
And that is not necessary.
Right, right. And then there's some interesting, there are some interesting kind of like a little bit of, the three of us can talk more frankly because we're all in healthcare, but there are some people in the principles who also see some value in the somatic work of the body. Now, the body keeps a score. Hannah is completely like doesn't, blah blah blah. That's, to her. But there is something very interesting that people talk about, people that I admire and walk this walk. My friend Debbie Milam, if you need a name, but where there are things that are quote unquote triggers that bypass conscious thought and just produce a cortisol storm. So, for instance, would be like, you're walking around minding your own business, and all of a sudden you smell the aftershave of the man that raped you when you were 16, and you just completely decompensate and fall apart. It isn't like you said, oh, that guy looks like the guy that raped me when I was 16, and then you panic about it. No, it comes in through the olfactory sensation and it kicks off a fight or flight. You better get the fuck out of here. You're in danger. And so
Yeah.
there's something interesting in that, that not not all thought is sentences in the brain. The, the,
Exactly.
the power of
Exactly.
the power of thought can be a physical sensation first or whatever. But it's still ameliorated or modified through the through, your meaning making machine kicks in.
Yes.
And the thought can be a sound, the thought can be a smell, the thought can be a taste. So thought isn't just, oh, that looks like the guy who raped me. It doesn't have to be sentences.
Exactly.
Thought can be other
Then
inputs.
content.
Yes,
It's
other
so much more
content.
than content. And I'll go along with the fact that what I really see how Hannah sees that talking about ameliorating the somatic. There are a lot of people in the three principles community, and I know I've had this conversation with Wendy. Some are MDs even. And they're, in my viewpoint, they're really watering down the power of understanding that everything comes from the
Right,
spiritual world,
right,
pure
right,
energy that
right,
we make something of in the
right,
moment.
right, right,
So I just don't want to water down the purity
right,
of the principles.
right. Right. And yeah, and I get that. And I've also known, like, my friend Debbie Milam, who has she's taking a class in brain retraining because she has, there she feels like there are things that her body just naturally gravitates to because it's a bad habit, and she is learning, but she adores the principles and she sees them 100%. And she's also doing something sort of like physical therapy for the brain in a way,
Mhm.
physical therapy for a broken bone, or physical therapy, or whatever, rehab I just had my heart was just a valve was replaced. I need to be in cardiac rehab. It doesn't negate thought,
Right.
consciousness, and mind.
I would put that in the same category as somebody who is, you know, who is, you can't be totally grounded in the principles because it's a never ending uncovering. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. We just see it deeper and more. So no matter how grounded somebody is in the principles, wisdom is going to come in and say, oh, time to do some yoga, do some stretching. Oh,
Yeah.
that article about brain retraining. That's interesting. I'm going to read more about it. So
Yeah.
that does not negate in any way.
No,
And it
no.
doesn't, yeah,
Agreed. Agreed. But it doesn't prevent people from pointing fingers and saying you're not a purist.
Mm.
And so, that can get
oh, here's a
good.
distinction. I would say if a three principles practitioner was saying, go do somatic work, that's not being pure because the person's wisdom would send them to
Right. Yeah,
somatic work.
I would agree with that 100%. If I was a 3P mentor, teacher, practitioner, and that's what we were talking about. And my 100% my job is to remind people of how the brain works or how experience is generated, and remind them of their true selves. Those are my two jobs. That's it.
Right.
I don't have another job as going, oh, by the way, you're going to really like this physical therapist. He's amazing. So
Right.
next time we meet, I want to know how your experience was with the physical. No, that's not my job. I agree with you
Right.
100%. Right.
Yeah, I'm so glad we had that little exchange. Yeah, because I find that it really gets confusing with a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I am not against anybody doing anything. Somebody told me that they are doing pole dancing and they love it. How about it? They're not doing
Right.
the sexual pole dancing. They're doing the pole dancing that is in their yoga studio taught by
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
yoga teacher. And you need enormous upper body strength, she told me, to be able to climb up a pole.
Right.
It's not a
Well,
sexual
I
thing.
mean, just hearing you say that, it makes me laugh because What does Wendy's daily life look like? Wendy loves to crochet. Lori wouldn't know a crochet hook from a knitting needle.
Oh,
And
I do.
Elaine, well, I'm just saying how you choose to you live your life and the way that you eat your food and your methylating salts in your baggie that you bring with you all the time. Like, not everybody brings a baggie of salt with them everywhere they go. Not everybody brings their crochet bag like I do everywhere they go. So
Right.
it's not about any of that individuality and
Right,
and any of that.
right,
It's not
right,
about that at all.
right.
It isn't even about that. Um, but Hannah has experienced people, like it just can't work that way. Like, whatever. Like you can't be triggered. Like, and people go, well, but I did have a little bit of a panic attack when I smelled the aftershave of my rapist. That happens.
Sure,
Yeah, it
absolutely.
does happen,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean you have to live there. It doesn't mean you have to say,
Right,
I'm crippled by it and I will never, you can just go, oh, every time, it's sort of like we have an allergy, like, okay, I have an allergy to strawberries and everybody else is enjoying a beautiful strawberry shortcake and I'm going to vomit if I have the strawberries. I'm going to have a bad time if I smell that aftershave. It's got nothing to
right,
do with, it can be,
right.
it's just as real and
Yes.
Yeah,
authentic as mind, consciousness,
yeah.
and thought. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Well, that's the beauty of being able to, be in the flow of life, riding through. Even if you get a sensation that is often termed triggered, even if you get a certain sensation, it's all okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
That's the
And
point.
yeah, that's the point. And so the
Yes.
illusion, I would say, now that we're talking about this, I would say Hannah is operating under an illusion that triggered is a bad word and doesn't exist. Let it go, Hannah. Let it go. Whatever's, the point is, this is how human experience works, and this is how we're really made. Two things. And don't worry about the word triggered. Don't worry about building a case and it's a wrong word. Just let it go.
Yeah.
I love this because you know what comes to
Yeah.
me, Wendy and Elaine, what comes to me is that's where listening comes in. Because if
Yep.
somebody uses the word triggered and one of us gets triggered by the word triggered, we could say,
Exactly.
help me understand what do you mean when
Yeah,
you use that
exactly.
word?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, when we start fighting about words or
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, anyway, I think we've beaten this horse to death, but that I know that that's one of her bailiwicks is, well, she just said it in the writing, I don't like the word trigger. It doesn't mean, it implies outside in. Okay, all right, great. Let's move on. So,
Well, I love how this discussion brought us to the beauty of listening. So if
Mhm.
we get tweaked, that's like a signal. You're making something up, and I'm making, if
exactly
I
right.
get tweaked, I'm making something up in my own illusion.
That's
So
exactly right.
that's when to ask, what do you,
Hmm.
Yes.
Herman, Sandra, whoever, Betty, what do you think of when you use that word, when you hear that word? What does
Yeah,
that mean to
and
you?
and the philosophy behind deep listening, right, is you want to see the world as the other person sees it. That's all. So it's born out of curiosity. Oh,
Right,
tell me what you mean by triggered. Oh, okay. And it's
right,
not like, oh, well, you might be a little bit misunderstanding about the word triggered. I'm not going to
yes,
say that to anybody.
No.
right,
I want to see
right.
the world as they see it,
Yes.
whether it's in a
Tell
five
me
minute
what,
listening exercise or a therapeutic
yes,
conversation for an hour, whatever. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Tell me what you mean by word
Mm.
triggered. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
beautiful. That was a
Yes.
great discussion about that.
Well, it's 1:55. Where do we leave off? Is there just a bit more to read to reach the end of the chapter or?
We can finish those two paragraphs if you want, because that's the end of the page.
Okay. Oops.
So it's the results were fascinating. Option 1 and 2 were pretty equal, but most voted for option 3. In the ensuing discussion, I was offered the alternative content warning. Many pointed out how the idea of a trigger warning is very infantilizing, and I agree. Next, I discovered some Harvard research on the topic. Benjamin Bellett, a PhD candidate, chose this topic for his research and made some very interesting findings. In short, he says trigger warnings are not doing anything apart from making a few people momentarily more anxious. That indicates that they don't work, and we don't have anything that supports they are conducive to preventing long-term harm. He describes them as self-fulfilling prophecies, meaning if you think something will be disturbing, your nervous system is already activated and vigilant, so you will probably be. Well, I think we could have all guessed that. Dr. George Pransky once taught me that the DSM is a list of coping mechanisms. This one copes by drinking, some cope by obsessive
No,
rituals.
this one copes by drinking. Some cope by obsessive rituals. Yeah.
Thank
go ahead.
you. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay. So this one copes by drinking, some cope by obsessive rituals, and others cope by escaping into a completely alternative universe. What I see is that they all have one thing in common, as innocent misunderstanding of the role of thought. But then, once they see it and understand it for themselves, they are free to live their best lives. Yes, some of these stories show how we can get into very dark places sometimes, but I am in awe of these people's courage, wisdom, and resilience, even humor, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart for sharing their stories openly with us. Read on and you will see it too.
Oh. The next one
Good.
is anxiety disorders, a conversation with Dr. Dicken Bettinger.
Yeah. So
Oh,
now this was all introduction and foundation and groundwork by Hannah. Now we're going to get into all the silos of the different diagnoses. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
good stuff. Yeah. Thank you for joining us all the way from Florida, Wendy.
You're welcome. You want to see where I'm looking out at the
Oh,
Oh
wow,
my gosh.
nice.
Beautiful.
That's yeah, there's Jeff. Hey, Jeff. So you had a good flight. Wow. You've got that whole lanai. That's what they call it in Florida.
yeah, Elena. Yep,
Uh,
yep. And
Oh my God.
our friends are gonna
Beautiful.
leave, our friends will leave tomorrow. We're gonna house sit and dog sit for 3 or 4 days, and then they'll come back. But we're gonna be here for 8 days total.
Enjoy.
Nice.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna visit Debbie Milam on Sunday. She and
Awesome.
I
Oh, nice.
she and I have never met. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Isn't that
Oh,
beautiful?
wow.
What part of Florida?
She's in Hollywood, Florida,
I
on the
should probably stop the
on the
recording.
on the East Coast.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's